Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Nelson, and I'm a reference and instruction librarian at Penn State Lehigh Valley. In this lightning talk, we'll quickly take you through how and why we built a discipline-specific community of practice for instructors interested in open educational resources at our campus. First, it's always good to touch base on the terminology. Throughout this presentation, I'll be using both OAER and OER. OER may be familiar to you as the acronym for Open Educational Resources. OAER, though, stands for Open and Affordable Educational Resources. This definition includes not just openly licensed OER and open access materials and free to use materials, but also materials that have been defined as affordable. The definition of affordability for course materials varies across institutions, but at Penn State, it's defined as materials that cost less than $50 total per student. Most importantly, due to the breadth and depth of the Penn State University Library's collections, we also include library licensed materials like unlimited user licensed ebooks within our definition of affordable materials, because for us, they come at no additional cost to students. I'll also often refer to COPs, which stands for Communities of Practice. As defined here by Etienne and Beverly Wenger Trainer, a community of practice is a group of people who share a concern or passion for something they do and learn how to do it better as they interact. At Penn State Lehigh Valley, our COP is made up of math instructors who share a common interest in advocating for and using OAER in their courses. So now that we have our terms down, here's a quick overview of what we'll discuss today. I find that it's helpful when I'm attending quick presentations like this to have a bookend like this to help me remember what's being discussed. So we're going to discuss how and why you might use discipline-specific communities of practice for OER work. I call these COPs discipline-specific because I think they function best when limited to members of a shared content discipline, and I'll explain more about why later. But I think it's important to mention that those members could be all instructors who are within the same shared department, as my example will show, but they could also take on other forms. For example, at a large institution, you might want to bring together all of the instructors, TAs, peer tutors, and others who teach and support a high enrollment, high impact course like a first-year experience course. There are lots of possibilities here, so please think more about what that discipline community might be for you and your campus. The community of practice aspect we'll dive into shortly. But essentially, we're creating a group that's focused on active work, on learning together and from each other, and on flexible collaboration focused on shared goals. While this practice could certainly be applied to many ideas, I'm applying it here to the idea of organizing instructors around OER and open education, specifically bringing together people who have a shared disciplinary frame and experience, and then leveraging that shared frame to simplify the conversation around OER for them and focus their efforts on their shared specific needs within that discipline. The Math OER COP at Penn State Lehigh Valley is made up of math instructors at the Lehigh Valley campus. In approximately fall 2020, I took the idea for the COP to Larry Mussolino, a math instructor and OER author at my campus, who helped me pitch the idea to his department. We use an informal and open organizing structure. I function as the organizer of the group, scheduling meetings, setting agendas, and seeking group input into decisions, taking and organizing notes and documentation, and finding resources or experts to answer any questions that arise. But the actual decisions about what the COP will work toward are handled primarily by members of the COP. We started our first meeting by sharing the needs and concerns they felt could be addressed by using OER or other elements of open education. Of all the ideas that arose, we then identified the project they felt was their first priority, specifically creating a tailor-made, openly licensed practice workbook to provide additional support for students in their shared early calculus classes. Not everyone in the group was ready or able to commit time to that project work, of course. Flexibility to varying workloads is a definite need for projects like this. But the two members working on the workbook have actually just received a state-level grant to fund their work as authors. Now that the workbook is running almost independently, my next step as the organizer is to go back to the rest of the COP and see if they're ready to engage in another project from their list. We don't want to take too much time away from their instruction, research, and support of students, especially right now, but we do want to give them all the opportunity to contribute whenever they're able to. Finally, the last big thing to note about our COP is that we represent a variety of experience levels with OAER. Some of our members have authored OER, some have taught with OER textbooks or supplemental materials, and some have never used OER before. That's okay. The main qualification for joining this group is that they're within the discipline and they want to learn and contribute. The OER expertise that we need is provided by those members who have more experience with OER, by myself as the OER liaison for the campus library, and by our OER expert teams within the larger Penn State University system as needed. So first, let's talk about why we used a community of practice model rather than a working group or a committee to organize this group. The first reason is that emphasis on the idea of organizing around practice. While we do want our members to learn together, we don't want to focus on just learning about or talking about OER. Instead, we want to focus on the practice of instruction and student support with OER and how our members can be more involved in that. Additionally, our campus already has an OER working group that focuses on education about OER and campus-wide data gathering and projects, so that's not something we needed to recreate. The second reason is to emphasize the aspect of communal sharing and shared work. When we formed the COP, we made it clear to members that while we understood the levels and styles of contribution would change over time, the focus was on having every member contribute and participate however they could, whenever they could. We want to address everyone's concerns and try out a variety of projects as the group learns and evolves together. So I'm doing just a really brief introduction to the idea of what a community of practice is and what it can do, just due to the nature of the lightning talk. If you would like to learn more about communities of practice, I would suggest you pause the recording here, read the definitions on this slide, and then follow that link at the bottom to learn more about the ideas behind communities of practice. But the community of practice wasn't actually the first or most important element that I thought of for this Math OAER COP's organization. Instead, organizing OER work by discipline was actually my first priority. And that's because of the experiences I was having as an OER liaison librarian when I conducted OER outreach and workshops for our campus. Every time I held a workshop, I kept noticing that instructors would start to ask a question about their courses, but then apologize for derailing the conversation because they wanted to discuss, say, OER for physics courses, but not everyone in the room was a physics instructor. I realized that that hesitation, that feeling that they might be wasting each other's time or dominating the conversation, might also be holding other instructors back from asking their questions at all. And then in the process of trying to follow up with me after the presentation, they might get lost in their schedules and not get the help they need. So by organizing discipline-specific groups to discuss OER just within those disciplines, we avoid those awkward moments of hesitation, because instructors are teaching similar content, maybe using similar resources, or maybe seeing similar needs or issues coming up in their shared courses and shared student body. Additionally, instructors in the same department may have courses that impact each other or tie together, so changes to one could have consequences for another. By getting these instructors together to discuss their shared content in a space that's just for them, we also can create an environment that encourages shared work. Those instructors, seeing their shared concerns and the impact a change could have on their students, may be more able to work together to address a shared concern than they would be to address an individual one on their own. Part of that is the motivation of working with peers, but part of it is just the practical ability to pool resources and have more hands to help get the work done. So, if you're interested in trying out this discipline-specific COP model, here are some tips that I've learned along the way that I hope will help you get started. First, as I said, I started by finding an ally in an area that I thought would be successful. I reached out to Larry Mussolino as a faculty member because he had already gotten recognition for his OER work from the larger Penn State system, and because I already knew that other members of the math department had been active in other OER outreach and conversations that I'd held in the past, so I knew that department might be interested in OER work. Larry was able to confirm for me that the math instructors would be a great group to try this with, and then help me get my foot in the door. From there, we started by gathering our members, emphasizing the aims of forming a group like this to them and the potential benefits for them and their students, but not dictating exactly what the group was going to look like or what it was going to do before we met. Before that first meeting, I would suggest doing some brainstorming on your own, but also with your ally about what that group might do. So what OER projects could you envision for the COP? And what does your ally think would be important OER work for their department to tackle based on their experience? It's really helpful to be able to jumpstart the conversation and have some ideas in mind in case that first meeting is a little slow to start or in case you get a lot of members who are unfamiliar with OER. For us, it was really important that that first meeting be the time that we got some strong possibilities down on paper for what our first project was going to be. We really wanted to emphasize that this is a project-oriented experience, so being able to get started on something as soon as possible would be ideal. And finally, I'd suggest bringing your experience as an OER advocate or support person, but also staying open to new ideas and stepping back when needed. I suggested, I think, one idea to our original brainstorming session, but I tried to really let the instructors lead the conversation so we could focus on their highest priority concerns first. But you can always bring in your expertise to offer ways that they might want to address those concerns based on your experience with OER, or suggestions of how other institutions have done similar things to what they're discussing. So that's a very, very brief, very quick overview of the concepts and benefits of forming a discipline-specific COP for OAER work with instructors. I hope this has been helpful, and I welcome any questions or thoughts you'd like to share with me at my email at ezn80@psu.edu. Thank you so much for listening.